It was supposed to be just another Friday night, the end of a long week. The kind of night where you dress a little nicer, order something stronger than usual, and let yourself forget about deadlines and Slack pings for a couple of hours. Michael had convinced me to join the team at this rooftop bar in Santa Monica. He said it would be good for me, that everyone's partners were invited, and that it would be nice to show my face. I didn't love the idea. Those gatherings always felt like theater to me, but I went anyway. The place was buzzing. Music pulsed just under the chatter, not too loud, not too soft, just the right volume to encourage people to talk louder than they needed to. The city lights stretched out around us, endless dots of gold and red, and the Pacific breeze carried the faint smell of salt even up there, 20 floors above the street. I remember clutching my glass of Sauvignon Blanc, cool against my palm, condensation dripping onto the table. I remember shifting uncomfortably in my seat, trying to look like I belonged, even though these weren't really my people. They were Michael's people, his colleagues, his little startup family. And then it happened. Michael leaned back in his chair, laughing at some half-funny comment, his arm casually stretched behind Sofia's chair. Sofia, the new face at the company, barely 2 years out of college, sharp with numbers, but always smiling like she'd already won the room, everyone adored her. And then, with that easy confidence he always had in social settings, Michael lifted his glass, glanced at her, and said, loud enough for the entire table to hear, "This right here, this is my work wife." The table erupted. Laughter shot out like fireworks, bouncing off the glass walls of the rooftop. People clapped, some whistled. One of the guys shouted, "Lucky man!" And Sofia, cheeks flushed under the glow of the string lights, laughed like it was the sweetest, most innocent thing, but I froze. It wasn't the words alone. It was the way he said it, the way he delivered it like a punchline, grinning, proud of himself, feeding off the reaction. The way Sofia leaned into it, like she wore the title proudly, and the way everyone else, his boss, his team, their partners, joined in without hesitation, like it was normal, funny, even charming. And I sat there, in the middle of the circle, invisible. You know that feeling? That split second when you realize you're the only one not laughing? When a joke is made at your expense, and instead of defending you, people turn it into entertainment? My chest tightened. I forced a smile. I took another sip of my wine. The liquid was warm by then, but I swallowed anyway. My silence was the only thing I could control. I didn't storm out. I didn't make a scene. But inside, something shifted. Because let's be honest, work wife isn't just a joke. Not when it's said with that much charm. Not when it's received with that much delight. Not when your real wife is sitting 2 feet away, watching her husband bask in the glow of someone else's giggles. It's a boundary, and once it's crossed, you can't unsee it. I glanced at Sofia. She looked at Michael like she was in on the joke, like they shared a secret world I wasn't a part of. Maybe it was harmless. Maybe it was just office culture. But in that moment, it felt like something else, something heavier. I looked at Michael. He didn't even check on me, didn't wonder how it might land. He was too busy enjoying the spotlight, loving the sound of everyone's laughter. And me? I sat there pretending I didn't notice, pretending it didn't sting, pretending I was okay. But here's the truth. I wasn't. That night I didn't fight him. I didn't ask for an explanation. I didn't lean across the table and demand respect in front of his team. I just watched, listened, stored every detail. Because sometimes silence is louder than words. The clinking of glasses, the roar of laughter, the glow of the city below, all of it blurred into the background. The only thing sharp in my mind was that phrase, replaying over and over, work wife. Do you know what it feels like to realize that the person who's supposed to stand with you, protect you, has just invited the world to laugh at your expense? It's humiliation, pure and simple. But humiliation has a way of hardening. I didn't cry on the rooftop. I didn't shrink. I didn't excuse myself to the bathroom to catch my breath. I just let it sit. I let it burn into me. And quietly, I decided this wouldn't go unanswered. Because when someone crosses your boundaries publicly, you don't always need to shout to get them back. Sometimes the loudest answer is silence. Sometimes the sharpest knife is patience. That night the rooftop party went on. Sofia kept laughing. Michael kept telling stories. The team kept celebrating. And I kept sipping my wine. My lips tight, my mind sharper than ever. The party ended. People stumbled into elevators, called Ubers, hugged goodbye. Michael wrapped an arm around me like nothing had happened, like the night had been a success. And maybe for him it was. But for me, it was the beginning of a different kind of story. Because one sentence, "This is my work wife," wasn't just a joke, it was a trigger. And triggers, they start fires you can't put out. So I'll ask you again, if it were you, if the person you trusted stood up in front of a room and handed your place to someone else with a smile, what would you do? Would you laugh it off? Would you confront them on the spot? Or would you stay quiet and wait? When you've been humiliated in public, you have two choices. You can shout back, make a scene, and let everyone remember you as the one who lost control. Or you can go quiet, you can wait, you can plan. I chose silence. That weekend, while Michael slept late, I sat at the kitchen counter with my laptop open. The cursor blinked against the white screen, and I started pulling threads, bank statements, expense reports, receipts forwarded to our joint email account. Tiny details most partners ignore, but I didn't. Not anymore. At first, it looked ordinary. A rideshare here, a dinner there, but the pattern began to show itself. Ubers billed at odd hours, restaurant tabs that didn't match any team meeting. 2 tickets to a Lakers game, but only one line in the company's calendar showing Michael meeting a client. Do you know that moment when small suspicions snap together, like pieces of glass forming a picture you don't want to see? I highlighted the lines, copied them, pasted into a new folder marked only with the letter SS for Sofia. Flashback, a Thursday night. Michael strolling in after midnight, his shirt wrinkled, saying, "Late strategy session." I remember the smell of champagne on his collar. At the time, I let it slide. That night in front of my laptop, I didn't. The next step was simple. I didn't need to confront him. I didn't need to yell. I just needed to pass a little nudge along. So I wrote an anonymous email to the company's compliance team. Irregular expenses tied to 2 employee accounts. No names, no accusations. Just enough to spark curiosity. Then I waited. Days later, I heard him curse under his breath at breakfast. Card got declined. He shoved his phone onto the table, irritation spilling over. Another dinner bill rejected. Another Uber charge bouncing back. Sofia texted him, the screen lighting up again and again. I didn't look. I didn't need to. It was working. Imagine sitting there, watching the cracks form in the foundation of someone else's story. Watching them squirm because for the first time, the system isn't on their side. I poured my coffee slowly, hiding the smallest smile. And here's the thing. Traps don't need claws. They just need patience. Because every canceled transaction was more than a nuisance. It was a message. Invisible, but loud. Someone is watching. So let me ask you. Have you ever quietly set a trap, knowing that the other person wouldn't see it coming until it was too late? It showed up on a Monday morning, not in the mailroom, not slipped under a door. It was waiting, plain as daylight, right there on Sofia's desk, a white envelope. No name on the front, no fancy label, just thick, clean paper folded neatly shut. I wasn't there when she first saw it, but word travels fast in an office. You can almost hear the shift in the air when something unusual happens. Chairs scraping, whispers floating between cubicles, the low hum of curiosity. People might not look directly, but their ears stretch farther than their eyes. I imagined her hands hovering above it, fingertips brushing the surface like it might burn her. Do you open it right away? Or do you wait, pretend it's nothing? She opened it. Inside was a stack of papers, screenshots, bank logs, screens from the company's internal system, numbers highlighted in yellow, notes scrawled in the margins in a handwriting that wasn't hers, receipts clipped with timestamps too late at night to be just work, a trail leading somewhere she didn't want anyone else to follow. Do you know that sinking feeling when your stomach drops before your brain even catches up? That's what I wanted her to feel. That flicker of panic that no amount of charm or laughter can mask. Flashback. I could see her giggling under the rooftop lights when Michael toasted her as his work wife. That smug glow in her cheeks, that look that said she belonged in my seat. That memory was fuel. And now I pictured her face paling as she flipped through page after page, realizing that someone had been watching. The envelope wasn't addressed to her, but it was meant for her. A mirror she couldn't avoid. Later, Michael mentioned it in passing over dinner. He didn't even realize what he was saying.
"Weird day,"
he muttered between bites. "Some compliance thing came up." Sofia seemed spooked. He shrugged like it was nothing, like he couldn't connect the dots. But I could, because an envelope isn't just paper, it's a message. A whisper in broad daylight. You're not untouchable. The office mood changed that week. People started asking quieter questions. Why was Sofia leaving her desk more often? Why was Michael spending longer in closed-door huddles? Why did the finance team suddenly show up on the 10th floor? I kept silent, just like before. The louder the whispers grew, the quieter I became. Because silence, paired with evidence, can scream louder than any confrontation. And here's the thing. Once an envelope is opened, you can't reseal it. You can't unsee what's inside. The room smelled like leather chairs and burnt coffee. It was one of those Monday mornings where everyone's voice carried just a little too far, and every shuffle of paper sounded louder than it should. The boardroom was packed, CEO at the head. Directors lined along the table. Michael, with that sharp suit he always saved for important days, and Sofia, seated 2 chairs away, hair pinned back, eyes darting at every page of the agenda like she already knew trouble was coming. I took my seat at the far end, no fanfare, no spotlight. Just quiet. The CEO cleared his throat. "We've received concerning reports." He slid a folder across the polished wood toward Michael. Everyone leaned in, hungry for the drama they pretended not to crave. Michael flipped the first page, expenses, receipts. Numbers circled in red. He smiled like it was nothing. "Clerical error," he said, smooth as ever. He flipped again. "Miscommunication," he added, a little tighter this time. But then came the last page. His hand slowed, his face shifted, and silence dropped heavy over the room. At the bottom of the page, beneath the highlighted charges, beneath the compliance notes, sat a signature. A name written in clean black ink, mine. I could see his jaw clench. His eyes flicked up, searching, landing on me at the far end. That perfect calm he always wore cracked, just enough for everyone to notice. Do you know that moment when the mask finally slips? When charm can't save you, and excuses turn to dust in your mouth? Sofia leaned forward, her lips parting as if to speak, then shutting tight. She knew. They all knew. The CEO's voice cut through the silence. "This isn't just about numbers. It's about trust. It's about integrity." His words weren't loud, but each one landed heavy. Michael swallowed hard. He wanted to argue. I could see it. But what argument do you make when the evidence is staring back, signed in ink? In that moment, I didn't smile. I didn't gloat. I sat there, hands folded, watching the empire he built on charm and shortcuts tremble. Because in the end, careers don't collapse with a bang. They collapse with a page turned, a signature revealed, and a silence that refuses to fill the air. So let me ask you, what's more powerful? Shouting in anger or letting the truth sit in the open where everyone can see it? The boardroom emptied like a theater after the final act. Chairs scraped, papers gathered, voices dropped to whispers that died out before reaching the door. Michael didn't speak, not a word. He didn't even look at me. His eyes were fixed on the table, on the folder that had betrayed him. The CEO's voice had been final. "You're suspended pending review." The kind of sentence that slices a man's career in half. Sofia tried to argue at first, something about context and teamwork. But her words trailed into silence when the CEO added, "Your project is frozen until further notice." The weight of that froze her too. I stood up slowly. My heels clicked against the polished wood floor, the only sound in the room. No one stopped me. No one congratulated me. No applause. Just the heavy silence of a battle that had been won but left no celebration behind. You'd think victory tastes sweet, that when you finally see justice, you'd feel relief. But in that moment, it felt cold. Like standing outside in the snow with no coat. I didn't smile. I didn't gloat. I didn't need to. The silence did the work for me. As I reached the door, I glanced back just once. Michael sat slumped, shoulders heavy, lips pressed tight like he was holding back every word he wanted to throw at me. Sofia stared at her screen, fingers frozen over the keyboard. And me? I walked out without a word, because sometimes silence is louder than any speech. So let me ask you, have you ever seen someone defeated not with shouting, not with rage, but with nothing more than a quiet exit? At first, I thought silence would protect me, that if I walked out of that boardroom without a word, the truth would speak for itself. But silence doesn't stay silent for long, not when someone is desperate enough to twist it. A week later, the whispers began, in the hallways, in the cafeteria, even in the bathroom stalls where women lingered longer than they needed to. My name, always followed by a pause, then a smirk, then a whisper. Heard she set him up. Smart, but dirty. Don't get on her bad side. I caught those words when they thought I couldn't hear. And suddenly, the same colleagues who had once smiled at me in the elevator started avoiding my eyes. It didn't take me long to trace it back, Michael, of course. Suspended didn't mean silenced. And what's more powerful than facts? A rumor. Rumors are sticky. They don't need proof. They only need repetition. You ever walked into a meeting and felt the air shift before you said a word? Like you were already guilty, judged, sentenced, all without a trial? That's what it felt like. I tried to focus on my work, keep my head down, but every canceled coffee, every cold shoulder, every let's reschedule email told me the tide had turned. It wasn't just Michael I was fighting anymore, it was perception. And perception, once poisoned, spreads faster than truth. So let me ask you, if your own colleagues suddenly believed you were the villain, would you fight back? Or would you let the silence eat you alive? I thought I had seen every angle of Michael's tricks. The rumors, the whispers, the subtle poison he left behind, even while suspended. But nothing prepared me for that call. It was a Tuesday afternoon, quarterly update. Just another routine meeting, cameras on, polite smiles, voices half distracted. I sat there with my notes, my face neutral, my mind already tired from the weight of gossip I carried. Then it happened. The screen flickered. A new window popped up. His name, Michael. My stomach dropped. He wasn't supposed to be there. He had no access. Yet his face filled the screen like a ghost that refused to stay buried. And his voice? Too loud. too sharp, cut through the silence. "I need everyone here to know the truth." Emily set me up. She framed me to save herself. The meeting froze. People stopped breathing. You could almost hear the collective click of judgment shifting again. Every colleague, every manager, every pair of eyes on that call turned to me, not with questions, with suspicion. My palms went cold. My throat burned. I wanted to speak, but the words stuck. He kept going, relentless, building his story, pulling threads of doubt like he'd been rehearsing this moment for weeks. "Have you ever felt the ground beneath you give way? Not because you did something wrong, but because someone decided you should fall?" That's what it felt like. And I realized in that moment, silence wasn't an option anymore. So let me ask you, if the person who hurt you hijacked the room and painted you as the villain, would you sit quietly or would you fight? I sat there on that call, my face staring back at me in the tiny square of the screen. Michael's voice still rang in my ears, heavy with venom, confident in its lies. For a second, I almost believed him myself. That's how good he was. That's how dangerous he had always been. But you know what? He underestimated me. I took a slow breath. Clicked the little icon, share screen. The silence in that virtual room was electric. Everyone leaned in, eyes widening, waiting to see if I'd defend myself or crumble. Instead, I dragged a folder onto the screen, one file, audio. Labeled with nothing more than a date, I pressed play. At first just static, then a low murmur. Michael's voice, unmistakable. "If we move the IP to Sofia's name, compliance won't catch it. Emily won't know until it's too late." Then Sofia's laughter, soft but sharp, slicing through the audio. "And if she finds out?" "Michael, she won't. She's too quiet, too careful. By the time she notices, we'll already be gone." You could feel the shift. The digital air changed. All those doubtful stares, suddenly they weren't on me anymore. They were on him. My hands shook under the desk, but my voice didn't. "These are your words, Michael, not mine. If anyone here still doubts who set the trap, listen again." I rewound the file. Let it play once more. His own whisper, his own betrayal, looping like a noose tightening around his neck. Do you know that moment when a room full of people realizes the story they believed is upside down? That collective gasp? That heavy pause before outrage floods in? That's what I heard, and it was sweeter than any victory I'd ever imagined. Because for the first time, Michael wasn't the hunter. He was the prey. So tell me, if you had the power to turn someone's own words into the weapon that destroyed them, would you press play? The boardroom had never felt so heavy. The air was thick, like everyone was holding their breath at once. The blinds were half drawn, slants of pale light cutting across the glossy table, papers scattered, coffee untouched. Nobody dared move. At the head of the table, the CEO closed the folder. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't have to. "This company cannot afford betrayal. Effective immediately, Michael's contract is terminated. Sofia's consultancy is dissolved." There was no explosion, no yelling, just silence. The kind that hits harder than any scream. Michael's shoulders slumped, his jaw tight, eyes darting between faces that refused to meet his. Sofia's hands trembled as she pushed back her chair, the screech of metal against the floor slicing through the room. I didn't smile. I didn't even flinch. I just watched, quiet, cold. Because this wasn't about joy, this was about justice. Do you know what it feels like to see power crumble in front of you? To see the people who thought they were untouchable suddenly stripped bare? It's not fireworks, it's not applause, it's silence, deafening, absolute. Michael tried to speak. "This isn't over." But his voice cracked, weak. The CEO cut him off with one sentence. "It already is." And that was it. everything he'd built, every smug look, every whispered scheme. It dissolved right there, in front of everyone. All that remained was the silence and the echo of a truth no one could deny anymore, because sometimes the loudest justice is delivered without a sound. When the boardroom finally emptied, I didn't feel triumphant. I felt hollow, the kind of silence that follows a storm. Papers still fluttered on the table, the echo of footsteps already gone, but my heart kept pounding like it hadn't caught up with the quiet. Yes, Michael was finished, Sofia too. The verdict was clear, their careers ended in one stroke, and I had won. Twice. But standing there, I realized victory doesn't always feel warm. Sometimes it's ice in your veins. I walked down the hallway, heels clicking against the marble. Every sound stretched long, like I was the only one left in the building. People avoided my eyes. Some glanced, then looked away quickly, as if my presence reminded them of something they didn't want to face. I wasn't the victim anymore, but I wasn't one of them either. It hit me then. Justice has a price, and the price is distance. At home, the quiet was louder than ever. No laughter, no warmth, just the hum of the refrigerator, the shadow of an empty chair across from mine. I had exposed betrayal. I had restored balance. But in the process, I'd carved out a loneliness I couldn't ignore. Do you know what that feels like? To win, but lose something you can't name? That night, I sat by the window, city lights flickering below. They looked so close, yet impossibly far. Just like people, I thought. Just like trust. And maybe that's the real lesson. Justice isn't free. It demands something in return. Your peace, your comfort, sometimes even your place among others. So I ask you, what do you think? Is silent justice worth the price it demands? The morning after the verdict felt wrong from the very first step. The elevator doors opened too slowly. The lobby air felt colder than it should. The security guard, who always nodded at me, looked past me like I was a reflection in the glass. I told myself I was imagining it, that I hadn't slept, that my head was loud, that the city lights had burned after images behind my eyes. But then I reached the 22nd floor, and the difference wasn't just in my head anymore. It was in the carpeted hush, in the way voices fractured and died as I walked by, in the spinning office chairs that seemed to turn themselves away when I entered a room. I pushed the door to our open floor. The espresso machine hissed. A laugh, too bright, cut itself off. I could smell burnt toast from the kitchenette, the scent that always meant someone was stressed and pretending not to be. I set my bag down. I opened my laptop. On the screen, the company logo sat there steady, blue and white, like a reminder. You still have a job, you still belong. But did I? Claire used to swing by my desk every morning. We weren't best friends, but she was warm. The kind of person who saved you a croissant after an early stand-up and sent you playlists for deep work. And I heard her heels before I saw her. For a second, hope rose. I turned, ready to smile, ready to feel normal. She saw me. She tucked her hair behind her ear. She lifted her mug. "Busy morning," she whispered to no one in particular, and kept walking, a small thing. A gentle slide in the wrong direction. But that's how distance starts, isn't it? Not with shouting, with small choices. With eyes that don't meet, I tried to work. I really did. Emails, a product spec, notes from last week's sprint. But every time I focused, a new Slack notification flashed in the corner of my screen, a little red pulse like a heartbeat out of rhythm. Most of them weren't to me. They were threads I wasn't tagged in, channels I didn't belong to. But whispers have a way of finding you, even through pixels. At 11, I made myself walk to the kitchen. I poured coffee. The room went quiet. 2 analysts, Sam and Tyler, stood by the fridge, whispering in a way that was meant to be private and meant to be heard, both at once. I'm telling you, he said she framed him. Come on, that audio was brutal, but he swears, like swears. Then how'd she get the recording? Exactly. The sugar packet trembled in my fingers. I tucked it into my pocket so they wouldn't see my hands shake. I stirred. I sipped. I turned like I hadn't heard, like I didn't care. Have you ever had to pretend you don't hear your own name bruised into the air? Have you ever stood in a room you earned your way into and felt it reject you like a bad transplant? Back at my desk, I opened a blank note and wrote, I did not frame anyone. The words looked childish, defensive. I deleted them. I typed, truth doesn't need an announcement. Then I deleted that too, because right then, truth felt like a body without a voice. At lunch, I took the stairs to the roof. The sun was too bright. Seagulls scraped the sky. From up there, the city looked honest. Hard lines, blue horizon, no whispers. I ate slowly. I watched the tiny matchbox cars crawl along the highway below. A breeze lifted a strand of hair and tried to make me forget the heaviness in my chest. My phone buzzed. An email. No subject line, no signature. Just one sentence. Did you really win? I stared at it. The gulls screamed. A siren in the distance climbed a scale of panic and slid away. I read the sentence again. It wasn't a question, not really, it was a needle. It didn't ask for an answer, it asked for a wound. I took a breath that didn't reach my lungs. I flagged the email, I unflagged it. I hovered over report phishing, then closed the app and slid the phone face down under my thigh, like I could sit on top of it and stop the bleeding. After lunch, HR sent a calendar invite. Quick check-in, 10 minutes, no agenda. I walked there slowly. The carpet felt thicker than usual. The air smelled like lemon cleaner and something else. Something like fear. Emily, the HR partner smiled. Not a real smile, a careful one. We just wanted to see how you're doing. I'm fine, I lied. She nodded. We're closing out documentation on the disciplinary action. There may be some residual noise. We'd advise staying professional, avoid engaging. Engaging with what? I asked, keeping my voice even. She looked at her screen. She read words that weren't hers. Speculation. I left with a brochure about the Employee Assistance Program tucked in my bag, like a Band-Aid for a fracture. When the elevator doors closed, I caught my reflection. Calm, composed, hair neat, lipstick unsmudged. A woman who looked like she knew what she was doing. A woman who looked like she'd won. On my walk back to my desk, I heard Sofia before I saw her, perfume, heels. The musical clink of bracelets. She was talking to someone I didn't recognize, a new contractor maybe, her voice pitched just so. Some people can't win without destroying someone else, she said, not looking at me. I'd rather lose than be that person. The contractor murmured something sympathetic. Sofia glanced over then, eyes meeting mine, and smiled the kind of smile that isn't a smile at all. I thought of the audio, of Michael's voice, low and familiar, smoothed by entitlement. If we move the IP to Sofia's name, compliance won't catch it. I felt the urge rise, sharp and hot, to walk over, to play the recording again, to force her to listen. But I stayed where I was, because the right thing said in the wrong room turns into the wrong thing, because there is a kind of victory that's loud and brief, and a kind that's quiet and stays. At 5, I shut my laptop. The light in the office had changed to that late afternoon gold that makes everything look like a photograph. People pretended to be busy. I pretended to believe them. I stepped into the elevator alone. The doors slid shut with a soft kiss. In the parking garage, the air was cool and concrete. My footsteps echoed. A car idled 2 rows over, engine hum steady. For half a second, the silhouette behind the windshield looked familiar. Broad shoulders, the tilt of a head I knew before I loved it and after I stopped. My breath stuck. The driver shifted. The lights washed my face, and I realized it wasn't him. Just a stranger checking his phone. I laughed once, quietly. Not at anything funny. At the way fear makes everything look like a ghost. Home was quiet. The kind of quiet that turns your own thoughts into thunder. I kicked off my heels. I poured water, not wine. I didn't want the blur. I wanted the edges, even if they cut. The refrigerator hummed. The clock on the stove blinked 6:07, then 6:08. The apartment held its breath with me. I opened the closet. Michael's suit jacket wasn't there. Of course it wasn't. He'd taken it weeks ago. But my eyes searched for it anyway, the way hands reach for a railing that isn't there. On the top shelf sat an old shoebox of photos. Weddings, trips, two smiles leaning into each other against a backdrop of oceans and borrowed sunsets. I took the box down. I sat on the floor. I flipped through a life that still smelled like sunscreen and hotel soap. Flashback. Big Sur. A cliff. A wind that almost knocked us over. Michael's hand steadying me from behind, his mouth near my ear.
Don't worry, I've got you.
I believed him then. The sea believed him too. Or it didn't, and I just wanted it to. The phone buzzed again, a text this time. Unknown number. He says you lied. I stared at the words until they blurred. I typed and erased, typed and erased. Finally, I wrote, "Who is this?" No reply. Just the 3 dots for a second, then nothing. The dots disappeared like a promise reneged. I blocked the number, then unblocked it, then blocked it again. I set the phone face down. I stood up and put the shoebox back on the shelf. I turned off the living room light and sat in the dim, watching the city glow through the window like a pulse. If you strip the triumph out of a victory, what's left? Is it still a victory, or is it just absence? I traced the edge of the window frame with my finger, wood cool under my skin. The glass reflected a woman who didn't look like a villain, didn't look like a hero either. Just a person who chose a line and paid for it. The next morning, I forced myself into a routine. Running shoes. Santa Monica air, crisp with salt, the boardwalk full of people pretending they weren't watching each other. I ran until the stitch in my side matched the ache in my chest. I ran because the body understands things the brain cannot. I ran because each step said a sentence my mouth couldn't. I am still here. On my way back, my phone pinged with a LinkedIn message from an industry contact I barely knew. "Hey, just checking. Are you okay?" Hearing some chatter. The word chatter made me want to throw the phone into the ocean. I typed, "I'm fine. Thanks." Then I muted the thread. At work, Priya from compliance stopped by my desk. She was the first person in days to look me in the eyes without flinching. "You good?" she asked, voice low. I nodded. "Define good." She sat on the edge of my desk. "Oxygen levels?" "Sustainable," she shrugged. "Look, people will talk." "But paper doesn't lie. You know that. I know that." "Do they?" I asked. "Know that?" "Not always." She smiled, not unkindly. "Truth is slow. Rumors are sprinting. But the marathon doesn't end at mile 5, I exhaled. "That sounds like a poster in a high school gym." "It is," she said, "but it's also true, a beat. There's a town hall next week. Leadership will address the transitions. You don't have to say anything, but if you wanted to, you'd have a good place to do it." My stomach flipped. "I thought the advice was don't engage." "It is," Priya said, "until it isn't." She squeezed my shoulder. "You'll know." After she left, I stared at my notebook. I wrote, "What story am I telling by saying nothing?" Underneath, I wrote, "What story am I telling if I speak?" The questions sat there like 2 doors in a hallway I didn't remember building. At lunch, I ate at my desk. Claire pinged me. "You free to talk later?" "A small olive branch," I typed. Yes, she sent a thumbs up emoji that felt like a life raft. The day blurred, meetings stacked. My calendar turned blocks of blue into a kind of rain. In the late afternoon, as the sun slid down the glass of the neighboring tower, I opened the email from the night before one more time. Did you really win? I drafted a reply I would never send. Winning isn't always loud. Sometimes it's just the absence of losing. Sometimes it's a line you draw and hold even when the world asks you to erase it. Sometimes it's lonely. I deleted the draft. I closed the laptop. I sat with the quiet. On the way out, I caught a reflection in the lobby glass that looked like Michael again. Same stance. Same habit of leaning on one hip like the floor belonged to him. A delivery guy turned, revealing a different face, a different life. My heart slowed. I laughed again, softer this time, not at him, at myself. At all the ghosts we carry long after the people are gone. At home, I turned on a lamp and wrote in an old paper journal I hadn't touched in years. The pen scratched the page like it was relieved to be useful. I wrote about the rooftop bar and the word work wife and the envelope and the boardroom and the way victory can feel like winter even in California. I wrote until the sentences lost their edges and turned to waves. I wrote until the noise in my head finally agreed to rest. When I put the pen down, the room felt lighter, not healed, not fixed, just honest. I stood at the window again and watched a helicopter sweep the shoreline like a slow, blinking star. Somewhere, a siren wailed and then gave up. My phone buzzed one more time, a new email, different address, same emptiness in the subject line. Inside, just 2 words. Not over. I stared at it. I let the words sit. Then I closed the email and put the phone face down. Not because I was ignoring it, but because I had already decided something that mattered more than any threat. I would decide what over meant for me. Not Michael, not Sofia, not the rumor mill, me. I turned off the lamp. I let the city's glow wash the room in that bluish half-night. I breathed in, I breathed out. I told myself the same sentence with each breath, slow as tide. I can hold this, I can hold this, I can hold this. And if you're listening, if you've ever stood in a room full of people and felt suddenly, brutally alone after doing the right thing, I want to ask you something simple and impossible. When justice costs you your place, do you pay it? Or do you bargain? Because that's where I am now, between the price and the receipt, between silence and the story, between what I fixed and what it broke. So tell me, if this were your life, your office, your name in their mouths, would you keep quiet and let the truth take the long road? Or would you step forward and claim the microphone? The town hall was scheduled for Thursday. By Tuesday, I already couldn't breathe right. Every calendar reminder, every don't forget ping, sounded like a countdown clock strapped to my chest. I kept telling myself I didn't have to speak. That leadership would stand there, polished and practiced, and say something vague about organizational change and moving forward together. I could stay in my seat, arms folded, face neutral, and let the words wash over me like rain on glass. But silence isn't neutral, not really. Silence is a vote. Silence is a headline someone else writes for you. That thought gnawed at me through the week. At night, I lay in bed with the city bleeding neon through the blinds, wondering what version of me they were whispering about. The woman who lied? The wife who betrayed her husband? The manipulator who bent the system? Or the ghost who sat at her desk, breathing too quietly, hoping invisibility would buy her time? By Wednesday, even my reflection looked suspicious. I caught myself in the bathroom mirror at work, water running over my hands, and thought, do I look guilty? Do I look like someone who'd ruin a man on purpose? The mirror didn't answer. Mirrors never do. At lunch, I sat in the courtyard with Priya again. She had that calm energy, like she carried a storm inside her but refused to let it show. She peeled an orange slowly, deliberately, skin curling away in one unbroken spiral. "You're too quiet," she said. "I'm fine. Liar." She offered me a slice. "Your eyes are loud." I laughed once, sharp. "You ever feel like you're trapped in a story someone else is writing?" Priya chewed, swallowed. "All the time. But here's the thing. You're holding the pen, even if it doesn't feel like it. Even if they try to snatch it. You're still holding it." I stared at the orange slice in my hand. The juice bled onto my skin. I licked it away and tasted something sharp, almost bitter. "What if speaking just makes it worse?" "What if not speaking already is?" she asked. That night, I dreamed of microphones, dozens of them, silver black, wires like vines, all pointed at me. Every time I opened my mouth, no sound came, only static. The room filled with laughter. Michael was there, Sofia too. They sat in the front row, clapping. I woke at 3 a.m., sweating, heart clawing at my ribs. The room was silent except for the refrigerator hum. I padded barefoot to the window, pressed my palm to the glass. The city below looked asleep, but I knew better. Somewhere out there, someone was still awake, writing a version of me I couldn't control. By Thursday morning, the office buzzed like a beehive. People lined up outside the auditorium doors, whispering, eyes darting, the smell of nervous coffee thick in the air. I slid into a seat near the back. The stage was lit too bright, a rectangle of white where shadows couldn't hide. The CEO walked out first. Behind him, HR, legal, a couple of board members with stiff smiles. He spoke of turning a page, of building resilience. Words that didn't belong to anyone and could belong to everyone. I felt the room shifting, like a tide pulling back before a wave. People weren't listening. They were waiting for something, anything, to make sense of the cracks they'd been staring at for weeks. And then, the microphone. "Any questions?" The silence was instant and heavy. No one moved. No one coughed. The kind of silence that makes you aware of your own breathing, your own pulse. My palms itched. My throat burned. I thought of Priya's orange slice, juice dripping down my hand. I thought of Claire's thumbs-up emoji, the tiniest bridge back to belonging. I thought of Michael's voice on the recording, cold and smug. "They'll never trace it." My hand lifted before I told it to. The microphone runner spotted me, eyes widening slightly like he hadn't expected me of all people. The mic was heavier than I remembered them being. It hummed with the weight of everyone's stares. I swallowed. My lips brushed the mesh. My voice came out lower than I expected, almost steady. "I need to say something." A collective intake of breath. Chairs squeaked. I could feel Sofia's gaze stabbing the side of my face, sharp as glass. "I've heard the rumors. I know what's been said about me." My voice cracked, just once, but I didn't back down. "And I need you to know, I didn't frame anyone. I didn't manipulate this company for some twisted agenda. What I did do was bring forward the truth. The truth that some people here tried to hide." Murmurs rippled through the room. Someone coughed. Someone else muttered, "Wow." I pressed on. "You don't have to like me. You don't even have to trust me. But you should know this. Every decision I made was to protect the integrity of this place, to protect what we built together. And if you still doubt me, fine. Time has a way of peeling the lies away." I handed the mic back. My fingers shook as I let go. The runner blinked at me, like I'd just stepped off a ledge he thought no one would jump from. The CEO cleared his throat, thanked me in a voice that was too formal, too careful. The meeting moved on. But the silence that followed me out of the auditorium wasn't quite the same as before. It wasn't rejection. It wasn't embrace either. It was pause. Like the story had stopped mid-sentence, waiting to see what came next. On the walk back to my desk, Claire fell into step beside me. She didn't say anything, just brushed her hand against mine, light, like testing if it was safe. Then she whispered, "Took guts." I didn't answer. My throat was raw, but for the first time in weeks, my lungs expanded all the way down. That night, the city lights didn't look hostile. They looked like witnesses, quiet, watching, waiting. And as I closed my laptop at home, another email pinged. Same blank subject. Same empty signature. Nice speech. Too bad no one believes you. I read it once, twice, then deleted it. Not because it didn't hurt. It did. But because I realized something in that moment. The whispers would never stop. The choice wasn't between noise and silence. The choice was between letting them write me or writing myself. And for the first time, I knew which side of the page I wanted to stand on. Friday morning, the office was too bright. Sunlight cut sharp across the glass walls, bouncing off every polished surface like it was trying too hard to be clean, too hard to be innocent. But you and I both know, light doesn't erase shadows. It just makes them louder. I sat at my desk, scrolling through emails that weren't really about work. Invitations to coffee, to catch up. Questions phrased too casually, like, "So, how are you holding up?" Even silence, when people passed my desk without looking. Every interaction was a measurement, a test of where I stood in the invisible hierarchy. By noon, the email came through. The official one. No rumors. No anonymous subject line. Just a memo stamped from the top. Effective immediately. Michael Carter's employment is terminated. Sofia Ruiz's contract has been dissolved. I read it 3 times. The words didn't change. Terminated, dissolved, final. I thought I'd feel triumphant. I thought maybe the air would taste sweeter, the tension would uncoil. Instead, it landed like a stone in my stomach, heavy, unmoving. People gasped when they read it. Some whispered, heads bent together like school kids with a secret note. A few glanced at me, quick then away, like I'd catch fire if they looked too long. Priya slid into the chair across from me without asking. She set her water bottle down with a soft thud. "You won," she said. I forced a smile. Did I? Her eyes searched mine. He's gone. She's gone. The company's safe. Isn't that what you wanted? I didn't answer right away. The truth sat bitter in my throat. What I wanted was peace. What I wanted was belonging. What I wanted was to not feel like my name was always half a sentence away from someone else's mouth. By evening, the office emptied. People were too polite to celebrate openly, but the relief was in the air, thin and buzzing, like static after a storm. I stayed late, alone in the glow of my monitor. The building was so quiet I could hear the hum of the elevator cables, the soft tick of the thermostat. Quiet is supposed to be peace, right? But quiet has a way of pressing in, reminding you of everything missing. I opened the email again, read the lines about organizational integrity and maintaining standards. My name wasn't in it, not once. I wasn't the villain. I wasn't the hero either, just erased. That night I walked home, no rideshare, no subway. Just me, my heels clicking on pavement, the city watching like it always does. A couple argued outside a bar. A man slept on a bench, wrapped in a blanket that didn't cover his feet. Life kept moving, uncaring. At my apartment, the lights felt too harsh, so I left them off. I poured a glass of wine, sat on the couch in the half-dark. My phone buzzed. Claire, a simple, "Thinking of you?" I didn't respond. Not because I didn't want to, because I didn't know what to say. I thought back to every moment that led here, the rooftop bar, the laughter, the work-wife joke that was never just a joke, the white envelope, the boardroom, the Zoom ambush, my voice into that microphone, all of it, step by step, a climb to this cliff, and now, victory, cold, silent. The truth had won, yes, but truth doesn't tuck you in at night. Truth doesn't hold your hand when the world feels sharp. Truth doesn't stop the loneliness from echoing in the walls. I stared at my glass, half empty, catching the glow of the streetlight outside, and I thought, this is the price. The price no one warns you about when they tell stories of justice. You win, you survive. But you don't walk away untouched. Because every victory takes something. It asks for a piece of you in return. And once it's gone, you don't get it back. I took a sip. The wine burned, bitter and sweet at once. My eyes prickled, but I didn't cry. Not tonight. Tonight was for silence. And maybe silence was the only witness I needed. So let me ask you, if justice came to you, but it left you standing alone, would you still choose it? Would you still call that a victory?